Hey, everybody, it's your host, Isaiah. Welcome back to the O&B Puckcast, episode number 268, brought to you by FlyersNittyGritty.com, Summit Adjusters, Jim's South Street, and of course, we are now featured on Hockey Hot Stove, an exciting new hockey forum website that features, I think, almost all the teams, if not everyone. I know the guys over there are working on that. If you scroll down the page, you'll see our logo. You can click on there and get access to our YouTube feed. And of course, we're doing videos now, as you well know, and we're live streaming tonight, not only on YouTube, but also on X and Facebook. So definitely check that out. And of course, we'll have availability on all the usual podcasts, and we'll talk a little bit about later about that. So let's go to our panel for his opening thoughts tonight. Always to my left, or I guess it looks like it's to your right now that we're doing video. Chef B, what's on your mind, man?
Nothing. Just curious to go through how all the Flyers prospects handled everything during the juniors here. It should be interesting to see our takes on it, obviously, and an outsider's take who is not like a big Flyers fan, but somebody from out of state like Chicago. I'm sure we'll draw some good comparisons along the way, and give us something to look forward to till hockey starts.
You got it. The great Dan Silver weighing in. What's up, man?
Got my London Knights Denver Barkley jersey on, ready to talk some Flyers prospects. We got a great prospect analyst on with us, so I'm ready to roll.
This is cool, definitely. We're looking forward to this one. But just before we go, I just wanted Chef to have the opportunity to tell people if they have home damage in PA, New Jersey, and Delaware, what can you tell us about Summit Adjusters?
Well, if you want somebody, the big insurance companies, they always have their guys, and they always have a series of lawyers at their fingertips. And, you don't want to go up against the big, bad insurance companies without a representative of your own. And Summit Adjusters can do that. They're licensed in, all of us are licensed in PA, New Jersey, some of us in Delaware, some of us spreading out to Maryland and Florida, we'll see. But they're very good. They're very good at getting you the most for out of your claim to get your home back in order. You're the priority. You come first. So when they're doing this, if they have to help you out in any way possible in order to get your claim settled, they're the ones to do. Call them at 215-752-0560.
You got it. And if you watch that chyron on the bottom, if you forgot that number, just check it out. It'll be right there on the stream. So without any further ado, let's bring on for his second appearance, our buddy, the prospect Don, Anthony Donati. Welcome back, brother.
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me. Last time we talked, you guys boosted up your entire prospect pool. So it's going to be a fun talk.
Yeah. We're going to talk about the prospects tonight. We're going to rank some of the Flyers' best prospects, probably like 15 or 20 players we're going to discuss as much as we can. But before we get there, Anthony, one of the controversies that still rages a little bit, but really raged for the last couple of years when Danny Briere took over and the new era of orange became a thing, was that the Flyers were not going to have this tear it down to the studs kind of rebuild. They were going to try and develop their culture and get a lot of the bad habits that had existed over the last decade that create a losing environment like you saw for years in Arizona, come Utah and Buffalo, and at least the former seems to be turning around. But other people felt like, if you look at who wins the cup, there's always a top 5 player in the lineup, or probably 2 or 3 of them. And a lot of teams take this approach, and it can definitely work out. And that's the direction the Chicago Blackhawks went, getting Connor Bedard. They got Nazar. They got Levshinov. They got really, really great players, but there's some real pain. So, you're a prospect guy. You have like this global league-wide view and obviously an opinion. What's it been like in Chicago going through this as compared to what you see with the Philadelphia approach?
Mm-hmm. Well, I actually compare the Flyers and the Blackhawks a little bit because I was a big Michkov guy. I think that he could be a number 1 pick in a lot of drafts. So I think what the Flyers did was a little bit different than the Blackhawks, because I see Michkov as an offensive genius. I was on him for like 3 years before everybody kind of knew his story if you were in the scouting world. And you got a guy that on the one side could have been the number 2 pick in the 2023 draft. The Blackhawks had to tank a lot, and it wasn't that they just fell off where the wheels came off. Similarly to some of these other teams, I know it's kind of the exact opposite, where the Sabres, they win all the games at the end of the season, and that kind of hurts their draft stock. The Blackhawks have been bad for a very long time. So I think that they were actually looking at and targeting Connor Bedard during that season. Luke Richardson actually played the depth pieces and the players that the Blackhawks had after the Patrick Kane trade, and they didn't have Taves at the back end of the run for the end of 2022-2023 season. And I think that the whole plan was trying to rebuild from that start. So I think the difference between the Flyers and the Blackhawks is that the Blackhawks were a team that was already tanking. They were rebuilding and they needed that future star. What the Flyers did was they kind of lucked out and got Michkov, who dropped because there was a lot of reasons. But I think that if Buddy Robinson wouldn't have scored that goal, and then the Penguins would have been kicked out of the playoffs, and everything happened with the Panthers and all of that stuff happened, I think the Blackhawks probably would have taken Michkov at number 3 overall. And maybe number 2 overall, they would have taken Demidov, just paired the 2 Russian players together. So it's always weird, like what a bounce does for an organization or franchise or fan base, because one goal could change the entire outlook of an entire organization or course of 15 years. So I think that the Flyers really lucked out getting Michkov, because I don't really see a scenario where even if you redrafted or whatever it was, he had 3 years left on his contract, and then he came over after very short, but both teams got a franchise player. So then all you have to do is continue to build depth out in the prospect pool, try to get some complementary stars. And I think there were some dark times for both the Flyers and the Blackhawks, but it was just that there was different ways of how they got that star player. One kind of lucked into it, and one tanked pretty harshly with what they were doing, trading every single player they can at the deadline. So I do see very similar players and pools that the Blackhawks and the Flyers do have. I think the Blackhawks kind of have more NHL ready prospects right now, but if you look at what the Flyers did in the 2025 draft, they kind of checked off a ton of needs in that base. They got bigger, they got stronger. I mean, getting Van Sage at 48 was an absolute steal. Matthew Guard, they just continued to draft really, really well. They made a couple trades. They moved their pieces. They got second round picks. They got value. They were targeting younger players that have extreme upside with like a Trevor Zegras. So they did it correctly, and they did it pretty quick. So I do think that Danny Briere or whoever is the decision makers with the Flyers are actually doing a pretty good job.
Okay. I think, and Dan, you may want to comment on this as well. I think the big concern is that the Flyers don't have players that look like they're going to be a number 1 center, a number 1 defenseman. And we're kind of hoping and praying that one of Carson Bjarnason, or probably more like Igor Zavragin, are going to be that starting number 1 goalie in like the top third of the league, or at least top half. And whereas the Blackhawks seem to have higher ceiling players.
Yeah, I was watching the really good interview. The Nasty Knuckles guys did a really good hour-long interview with Rick Tocchet that I recommend that all Flyers fans watch. Riley Cote's on the show, former Philadelphia Flyer. And here's the thing. You look at the prospect pools around the league, the Blackhawks have a better prospect pool than the Flyers. The Sharks have a better prospect pool than the Flyers. The Canadians have a better prospect pool than the Flyers. Like the Flyers are not going to win the cup or become a perennial cup contender by out prospecting these other teams, right? But that's not what they're trying to do. What they're trying to do is build a winning culture and combine it with some pretty good prospects and some pretty good players, right? Like they've been very transparent from day one about their plan. It's not a tank. Like, they are not tanking. They don't believe in that. They never believed in that, this current regime that the Flyers have. So they've focused on building up the locker room, building up the culture, bringing in good front office people to the team. And that's what they're going to do. And they've been very honest about it. So they think that they've already built a pretty good culture with this team. And they have a lot of good young players. I mean, Michkov is very good. Tyson Forrester is good. Cam York is good. Tippett, you go down the list, Noah Cates. They've got some good young players, right? And then they've got some good young prospects. Not a whole lot of great prospects. You could argue I would argue they only have 2 great prospects in the system right now. But that's not how they're going to win, right? They're going to win with a mix of players and culture, and they believe that they're going to do things right. And that's where I think they feel that probably teams like the Buffalo Sabres have failed, right? How many number 1, number 2 picks have the Sabres had? They haven't been able to build anything up with that. There's no right way to build the team. And so we're going to have to see if it works or not. I do think they have the right personnel in place in the front office. It's just going to come down to whether or not they can build this culture that bridges the difference between the talent level of the players between them and other teams. Like the Sharks have Macklin Celebrini, they've got Michael Misa, they've got Will Smith, they've got Sam Dickinson, they've got Yaroslav Askarov. Like the Sharks have a ridiculous amount of young talent. The Ducks have a ridiculous amount of young talent. The Blackhawks do. The Flyers think that they can build a better culture than those teams. And we saw this year in the draft, and we'll get into it, that they're now going to start building towards size, tenacity, also skill, that type of thing. So that's what the Flyers are going to do. I think that they're also going to try and put all their marbles in the basket of this offseason. And maybe, they're hoping for a miracle. Look, they're hoping that somehow they end up with a Connor McDavid or a number 1 defenseman in free agency, right? That's part of their plan, is they have all this money coming up next offseason. They're hoping beyond hope that they're going to be able to pull in a huge free agent. So that's sort of the plan, and we're going to see if it comes together.
Yeah, Chef?
So as a follow-up to that, if you're looking at who that they have, let's just take a quick peek here. We'll look at Dan's prospect top 20 here. So if you're looking at this like logically, in 2 years, let's just say we give these guys time to cook, and rightfully so. So the next 2 years, you could conceivably have 3 or 4 of these guys maybe in the lineup as steady players, plus a couple of free agents that they pull in. What's a realistic timeline that the fans could get behind? Because I was listening to other shows and other podcasts, and we love Jason Martinez, and he says, would it shock you to know that the average rebuild in the modern NHL era is 8.5 years now? And I was shocked at that because I've seen teams turn it around before, but if you average it out. So are we looking at the Flyers ahead of the curve or behind the curve or whatever? But in 2 years, they could have 3 or 4 more homegrown talent in the lineup, possibly 2. They have the money to spend, and they have a couple more from free agency. The biggest question is that enough to make them contenders in 2 years? I mean, it looks like a decent prospect list, and if half of these guys hit, it's a big win, especially for this organization, because you can look back, and I have. Generally speaking, they are not a good drafting team. They've always seemed to get their better players. They've outsourced it. So I'm curious now to see what everybody else thinks, because we're specifically talking about the young kids. Which ones do we hope or think they should fit that timeline? Because we keep saying the timeline is important. Time and everything. You got 2 seasons of good money coming off the books. What say you? I guess we can go to Don first.
Yeah, I think that Porter Martone obviously is going to be that contributor. I would slate him as a star. I think that he has star potential. I think that the clear weakness in his game was his first 3 strides. And when he goes to the NCAA level and the coaching, you're going to be practicing a lot more. You're going to be able to work on that skating. I think Jett Luchanko is also a middle 6 center. I think that you have 2 middle 6 centers now. So are you going to be able to mix and match him and Nesbitt? I think Nesbitt is a really good player, old style type of center. He has a lot of skill, in my honest opinion. Very good size. I was very high on him. I didn't think that he was going to go 12, but I think that he brings what you kind of need. Same with Van Sage. He kind of fits a role. If he's not going to play in the top 6, which I don't believe he will, he's going to be a great bottom 6 player for you. He's going to fill that kind of need that you need. Jack Murtagh is a really good player. I think that he definitely was underrated. I thought that he could have been in the first round, just kind of late, maybe in the 30s, somewhere around there. But obviously, I think that he has a really good shot. 6'1", good size. Denver Barkey is another one that I think that size is the question mark there, but he's very skilled. He obviously can do a lot in the offensive zone. You give him a little bit of space, he's going to be able to operate with it. I think that if he does translate to the NHL, he's going to be a really good player. You guys have the pieces. Bump is pretty good. I know that he was a 5th round pick in 2022, but he actually does have some upside. I don't know necessarily what his floor will be, but he does have some upside. I think that your 2nd round pick in 2024, Berglund, who had an incredible international tournament, I think that he's really good. 6'4", again, size, 210 pounds. I think that that's somebody that you could try to put into your lineup in the next 2-3 years. I think could get NHL minutes. I see a lot of players that I think that can actually be translatable. Gill is one. Amico. I really liked Carter Amico this year. I can't believe that he went where he did. I think that was kind of the range, top 40 area, 6'5", right-handed defenseman. I think that I know that Link from New Wave Hockey, who's a Flyers fan, was slating him as a top 20 pick, and he did fall a little bit in his rankings because of obviously, but I think that was kind of a really good steal. You had 2 2023 goalies that you took, I think 30 picks in between each other. I think that was interesting, but I think that was good. You need a 1A, 1B in the NHL now. And I think that that's something that other teams are going to start doing, where you take multiple goalies in the mid rounds because it is just lottery tickets. It's similarly, you're taking flyers as well. Somebody like, no pun intended, but
No,
honestly,
exactly.
it's like Trevor Zegras. He was a Flyer, and you kind of got him for a cheap deal because it was your 3rd best 2nd round pick. I just feel like if you continue to do that with Michkov already slated as your number 1 player, you're probably franchise forward, in my honest opinion. I think he has that upside. You just want to take upside swings, and I think that's what you did. Van Sage only played 12 or 13 minutes a night, and his minutes were shelled. He's kind of farther away, but his body and his size, he should have been able to kind of dominate the competition a little more. But now he's going to be getting more minutes at Michigan State. I think that him being there is going to be good for his development. I think that just developing a role, getting more love with the coaching staff. I think that you guys have a lot of good pieces that we can see being the future of the Flyers. So the next era is going to be a lot younger. It's going to take 2-3 years, but once these guys start coming out, it's going to be good. And the 2026 draft's a lot stronger in a lot of people's eyes than the 2025. So you guys still have a lot of draft picks there. I think that it's going to be very replenished, more than a lot of teams, because what you guys did in that 2nd round. Matthew Gard wasn't even talked about, and he's 6'5", really good, can stand in the front of the net if you need him to. I think that he's an NHL player. So you guys got 5 like NHL players in the 2nd round. I don't think any team has gotten that value in years.
Yeah, I mean, I think you got a point there. I mean, and I like the fact that it's going to take 2-3 years because, like I said earlier, we're not really sure of the ceiling. A lot of these guys are mid-6 players, but also once the guys are in the lineup, that doesn't mean they're going to be steady contributors. They're going to have their ups and downs. They're going to have the growing pains at the NHL level. But I think that, I mean, now's really probably a good time to start, our look at how we would rank the Flyers prospects. And maybe, if you wanted to go, if you rank them, or we wanted to go with Dan's ranking, whatever you're most comfortable. So Porter Martone is going to be the head of anybody's list. Then maybe we could have little thumbnails on every one of these guys so the fans can get acquainted.
Yeah, I think what you're doing, whereas like teams like the Sabres are taking best player available every time, not really finding roles. You're building a team. I think there's a difference between some people's prospect pools. Sometimes it's just best available every time. You're seeing an organization build for like knowing your personnel. What do we need? What do the Flyers organization needs? I think that sometimes if we're going to talk about the Blackhawks, it was speed, under 6 foot players. And then it was third, fourth round. You're going to take a guy that's 6'4", kind of has a little upside, and then they wouldn't get signed 2 years out because the CHL, like they would just like fall through the cracks. You wouldn't know if you should sign them at 19, 20 years old, and then they would just like not be on your roster anymore. So I think that what the Flyers have done is take players that they can see contribute into the role. I think Nesbitt would probably be my number 2 Flyers prospect, just because of the capital you gave up to get him, as well as I think that there's just some more upside there. Just to think that it's kind of like Vaslav Nestrasil, because I was talking to Muskegon Lumberjacks broadcaster about this. Like, Vaslav didn't have a good season in the USHL. In the first 8 games, he had 0 points. And then you see that massive jump where he was one of the best players, a very good contributor to a championship team. I think Nesbitt had a season where people were a little surprised about. And I think that if he takes a jump from there, I think you're going to kind of be like, okay, that's why they drafted him. I think that a better season for him is going to open a lot of people's eyes. You can't, like, the same with Roger McQueen. It's very hard to find 6'5" centers that do what they can do. So I feel like that's just why he was drafted there. And it's old style. Like, I think of like a better Dave Bolin, a lot more size, a lot more skill, but you can project him as a middle 6 contributor. I think that Jett Luchanko would probably come in after that. And it's just because he's another middle 6 guy that's projectable. I think that he played well in his first few games with the Flyers. I was kind of shocked that he was already playing a couple games. But then obviously he got sent back down. But I think that he was a good player. I think that it was a little surprising that they went in that direction during that draft, but you are building out your team. The thing is there's probably a goalie in there too in the top 5 or 6, but it's just like I've no idea. I know that you sent me that list and you had the KHL goalie who had a .912 save percentage that you drafted in the third round. Yeah. And I think Bonk would probably be 4 on that list. Maybe a goalie somewhere in the 5, but I'm not really sure. It's very hard to project what a goalie is going to do. So I think that you need to take a goalie every single draft and just hope and pray that they kind of turn out. You see what the Sharks are doing with Harabel, Askarov, which they obviously traded for, and then Ravensburgen. It doesn't matter if these guys are elite goalies. They could flame out. So why not just take as many as you can if you have a lot? So I would say I'm a big Denver Barkey guy, but since he's 5'9", I think people would probably lower him on the rankings, but I'm still going to continue to say skill matters. So I'm going to say Denver Barkey, probably Jack Murtagh there. I'm a big Carter Amico guy, even though like I know that's probably higher than he should go, but he's 6'5", he's mobile, he could really do a lot. And when you're 6'5", right-handed defenseman, you're going to go higher and are going to be more important. So on a trade value aspect, I think Carter Amico at 6'5", 230 or whatever, 225, you're going to need a guy like that to kind of hit. Gill is also 6'4", right-handed defenseman. I really like that they got him. Berglund kind of shocked me, also 6'4". I mean, there's a trend here. Van Sagi, I would probably put next. So, and then the other ones, guard, I would probably put after that because I am high on guard. I was surprised that he fell that far. So yeah, like Dan, I would like to go to your list as well. So I feel like that those were some guys, and then a tier below.
Dan, you got it.
Yeah, the funny thing about the Flyers list is that I think there's not really any right answers in terms of once you get past Martone, because it's kind of hard to see where some of these guys are going to end up. So like I can give some blurbs on, obviously Martone is the one guy who you look at and you're like, this guy, his logical upside is first line NHL player, right? Other than Martone, I don't think there's a single player in the system you look at and you say that the likeliest outcome is either a top line player, a top line forward, or a top pair defenseman. Like, I just think we're going to have to hit on some guys for someone to reach that potential. So the reason that I had Yegor Zavragin second on my list is that I look at him and I see the guy who, to me, immediately has the second highest upside on this list. Like, you look at what Zavragin did at the age of 19 years old in the KHL, and there's not many goalies that have done what he did, playing on one of the best teams in the league. I mean, Michkov wasn't allowed to be on this team, whether or not it was right or wrong. He was sent to Sochi, right? Because they didn't feel that he was defensively responsible enough, or whatever the reasons, to play on SKA. However, the toughest position on the ice, goaltender, they were so impressed by Yegor Zavragin that they basically handed him the starting job. And he wore down a little bit, halfway, 3/4 of the way through the season. But like, what he was doing the first half of the season was absolutely unbelievable. So I would put Zavragin second, because I think that he has the second most exciting potential of anybody on this list. And then you just get into this territory where, the prospect on had Nesbitt second. I could see the argument for that, because he has a ton of upside, right? If he can improve his skating, maybe he does become a first-line center. It's not completely impossible. He's so big. He's 6'5". I had Jett Luchanko third, just because I feel like he's the safest bet among the Flyers prospects to become like at least a second-line center. I think he's got a pretty clear-cut path to that with his talent, and I think the upside might be capped there for him just because of his size, but who knows? You never know. He could develop into like a Braden Point type of guy. Then you start getting into, for me, I had Oliver Bonk fourth. Maybe I could have had him a little lower. He took a step back this season, I think, and a lot of it maybe was due to how good Sam Dickinson was, but I think that Sam Dickinson is a better defenseman than Oliver Bonk, right? I think the Flyers probably wish that he would have fell to them the year before when they ended up taking Luchanko. I think that was probably the guy they wanted, another London Knight player, right? And so I think that Bonk's role was a little bit diminished. His points, which, by the way, Bonk should not be judged by his points. He's never going to be a big offensive producer in the NHL. It's just not going to happen. But his points really fell off. And again, not the marker for defensemen, but I think he's more of like a steady second pair type of defenseman. Maybe there's still some upside there. It takes defensemen a long time to develop. His dad, Radek Bonk, was like one of the better defensive centers in the history of the NHL, and he took some time to develop, right? So clearly there's that runway. I had Nesbitt fifth. I agree, with Anthony that Nesbitt, he's very exciting, and just because of what they traded up to get him, I think you have to give some credence to that. I had Alex Bump sixth, who's probably Alex Bump is the only guy on this list this year that is likely to be starting the season with the Flyers. I think that he's got a good chance for that. But again, he's 21 years old, so he's a little older than some of the guys on this list. He's still not that old. But I had Bump sixth. Denver Barkey, I got the jersey on. I had him seventh. The thing about Denver Barkey is he just seems like a winner, right? That London Knights team has been one of the best teams in the Canadian juniors the last few years. He's the captain of that team. Like, that tells you a lot right there about his leadership ability on the ice, off the ice. He's up to 170 pounds. The Flyers had him listed for development camp at 5'7", 170 pounds. He's putting on some weight. I think he's exciting. And then the guy had eighth was someone who really impressed at the World Junior Summer Showcase, and that's Jack Berglund. And I think what we're seeing from Jack Berglund, he was a second-round pick last year, big, strong Swedish center. He's 6'4", 210. Nothing that really got people excited when they took him, but he's really developed well. And if you read what some of the smart people are saying about the World Junior Summer Showcase, is that what he showed was an ability to drive the net, an ability in tight spaces to get off shots. He's a guy who right now maybe looks like he could be a number 2 center in the NHL. At minimum, probably a number 3 center. And what I like about it is it shows you that it takes these bigger guys some time to develop. So you look at like a Nesbitt, you look at like a Matthew Guard, right? Big centers that the Flyers took this year. And you can get excited about, hey, if they develop like a guy like Jack Berglund developed, could get pretty exciting. So I had Berglund 8. He'll probably be over in Sweden this year, I think. Another year of development there. We'll see how that goes. One of the exciting prospects, another guy. See, I think a lot of Flyers fans kind of forget about some of the guys they took in the second round last year. But Spencer Gill, big, strong defenseman they took in the second round last year. I think he has really developed well. He's got some offensive ability. I think he's a guy that's exciting. Chef talked about how that the Flyers don't have, and Kevin Bull mentions it here, the Flyers don't have a lot of high-end prospects at D. They're going to have to, I don't know what they're going to do, but they're going to probably have to try and sign a top-pairing defenseman. But Spencer Gill is one of the more exciting defense prospects that they have. His upside,
and he's right-handed too.
He's right-handed. Bonk is right-handed. He might have a higher upside than Oliver Bonk, Spencer Gill. He just is a little more athletic than Bonk is. And then rounding out my top 10 was Jack Murtagh, and we've talked about his tools. A lot of people think that he was a steal in the second round where he went. He's got really good tools. And so I'll quickly go down like who I had after that. I had Carter Amico. And what you're going to notice is a lot of these guys are very solid prospects, right? Some teams may have more elite prospects than the Flyers, who I would argue that the Flyers have 2 elite prospects. Because I actually do think Zavragin you could put in that territory. Goalies are unpredictable, but if you're going to look at the goalie prospects out there, Zavragin is clearly a top 5 goalie prospect in the world right now. So I would have him and Martone as elite prospects. Then you've got this huge area. Probably the Flyers have more second/third tier prospects than anyone in the league. So I go down 11, Amico, who's got the offensive, he's got the athleticism to develop into like a pretty big, strong defenseman who can skate. We'll just see how the knee injury does. And him and Murtagh are both going to be at Boston University. The Flyers are going to have a lot of kids in the NCAA this year. You've got Martone and Shane Van Zage at Michigan State. You've got Murtagh and Amico at Boston University. You've got Cole Knuble probably at Notre Dame. You've got some other prospects too. I don't even have my 20th prospect, Heikki Ruohonen, who was good in the World Junior Summer Showcase, is going to Harvard this year. But so I had Amico 11th, Carson Bjarnason 12th. Bjarnason, a lot of people have him higher on the list. I think that's all sort of based on projectability and not really on what he's done. He was better at Brandon this past season than he was the season before, but I'm not sold on Bjarnason yet. I kind of want to see him show it, and we're going to get to see him in Lehigh Valley this year. So that'll be good. One of my favorite Flyers prospects, who I was begging for them to draft this year, Shane Van Zage, I had 13th. I probably should have had him higher. He's one of my favorite prospects that the Flyers have, but the fact that I put him that low shows you that they've got a lot of other guys kind of in that territory. I had Nikita Grabenkin, number 14, the kid that the Flyers got from the Maple Leafs in the Lawton trade. I think he still has a little bit to prove. And then I had Hunter McDonald, Matthew Guard, Cole Knuble, Devin Kaplan, Sami Tuomala, who that really shows you how much they've improved their prospect pool over the last year or so, both with the guys they drafted this year and the guys who developed, like Berglund, like Bump, like Spencer Gill, because last year Tuomala would have been ahead of a lot of those guys. He did have a down season in the AHL, but he still has some exciting traits. And then I had Ruohonen to cap off my top 20. So really, to me, the Flyers prospect pool is highlighted by 2 guys who I think have elite potential, and then a lot of guys who I think are going to be solid NHLers. So that's kind of where I see it headed. Obviously, they drafted for size this year, sort of a course correction after some of the Luchankos and the Luchanko and Denver Barkey So they kind of had a little bit of a course correction towards the direction I think they want to go. So, but it's a somewhat exciting prospect pool, but I think it's going to be a very good prospect pool for filling out a roster.
Yeah, Chef, just before we get more from Anthony. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Mike, I would say this. I see Dan that you have Ruhonen. He's like 20. You have a couple of players in ahead of him. I mean, his last 3 tournaments he's played. I didn't get to see any of. I was down visiting my daughter, so I didn't get to see anything this past week on any of the tournament. But I would have to say, from what I was reading and what I was seeing, wasn't Ruhonen getting first line minutes for Finland? And
well, I think Berglund was getting them for Sweden. I'm not sure Ronan.
I thought I read that, but
I know he had 1 goal, 1 goal, 4 assists, but
he had a pretty good showing. And I don't know if I would definitely have him above some of those guys at the bottom there, like Tumala and Knubel and maybe even Kaplan. But I mean, just a bigger guy that has I guess like more potential, let's just say.
Yeah, I mean, it shows the depth of the system. I mean, I love it. We've got a lot of animals on the show. My cats.
Yeah, I was going to say we got a cat in DC. We got a dog
on the show.
Black dog.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, Led Zeppelin, man. Come on.
Yeah, Chef. I mean, look, last year at this time, and I got a bug. I got to take care of. Last year at this time, Tuamala was a top 10 prospect for the Flyers, right? So, and now sort of, we have to remember that these kids' development paths it changes, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that go into what happens with these kids every year. And so I think it's kind of, I didn't want to move Tuamala down too far, but I couldn't help myself because the Flyers had a lot of guys develop and a lot of guys that they drafted. So
I think, Anthony, we'll spin it back to you. I think Tuamala's probably got a make or break year with this prospect pool. He just doesn't seem to get certain things at the AHL level, and he shows flashes, and then he can't keep it. His B game just isn't there. And at some point, he could be a candidate to be moved on from. But do you have any observations about some of the other players that you had not mentioned, like that? Maybe even some that Dan didn't mention, or what have you? Because it is an interesting pool that they do have.
Yeah, I think the Flyers, I was actually ranking the best prospect pools in the entire NHL, and the Flyers had the top 10 pool. I don't remember exactly where they were because it was like a month ago, and I went on vacation for like 2 weeks, and after that it kind of all was blur, but they were definitely in the top 10. I think they were like 7 or 8, honestly. And the thing is, it's just because of the depth of the organization. They have a lot of hits. A lot of teams have draft picks, but they don't normally take every guy that I think is falling in a draft. Carter Amico was somebody that I really liked, but I still think that he was drafted a little high for his range, but I still like him. I think that he was probably 45 range, and you get that really good size. Like, that's a really good player. I see him as I could see him as a number 4 on a team where you're very mobile, kind of like a Nick Hjalmarsson type of player. I think that every team needs that. Van Sagi is really, really good. I really like him. I know that I tweeted something today about Dan's list and was talking about how if Van Sagi and Guard are 13 and 16, you have a really good prospect pool, because those are guys that should not be outside of your top 10. Obviously, if we're talking about the Sharks or the Blackhawks prospect pool, you probably should put Van Sagi outside of the top 10, but there's not a lot of teams that should have Van Sagi out of their top 10. So that kind of just shows. I think there are a lot of teams that have built their prospect pool with like some guys that I don't necessarily see if they have a good defense or they have a good goalie. The Flyers have everything on the list. I think that more elite high-end skill would probably be a little bit better. But the thing is, it's because Michkov was already graduated from the prospect pool. You got Porter Martone, which was an absolute steal. I have no idea why he fell that far. I still think that he was a top 4 player in the entire class. Obviously, people are drafted differently and they fall all the time, but I still think that Porter Martone could be a 40-goal scorer. I think that he is an incredible playmaker with great vision that I think goes under, I think it goes overlooked. I know that when you put playmakers around him like a Michkov, your power play is going to get a lot better. The thing is, like, I can totally see roles being filled out. Powell is somebody 6'2", has really good size. I know that I'm not really sure what you guys think of McDonald at 6'4", left-handed defenseman. I know he had 18 points in the AHL in 70 games, but do you guys have a lot of really big defensemen? Even the 35th pick in 2020, 6'3" right-handed defenseman. So, that's just another right-handed defenseman that's over 6'3". I don't know if any team has over like the number that the Flyers have and 6'3" plus right-handed defenseman in their prospect pool. I really have I don't know any other prospect pool that has this many than the Flyers do. So getting your 2 goalies who I think graded out really well in the hockey prospecting model, which is from Byron Bader. I think the 2 goalies that the Flyers have, I think it was like top 10 on that list. So that was I can't say like Jarnson, the 6'4" goalie.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a tough name. Yeah.
2023 51st overall, and then you got the goalie at 87th overall, who's elite in Dan's terms. And the thing is, there was a lot of goalies that went in that class. Adam Guyan was the number 1 off the board at 35th overall, and he hasn't really lived up to that, but he was an overager, passed around, and then passed around the previous year. And then he was drafted as the first goalie. Harabel is somebody that hasn't really, I think, is average in his progression. There really hasn't been anything that is like worrisome other than every goalie that the Sharks have brought in, but he hasn't done anything to surprise. So I think that the 2 goalies that you took other than Fowler are probably very good goalies in this class. So you've hit on the picks that you have. It's not like the Avalanche where they had 3 picks or the Stars who have 3 picks. You guys always have really good amount of picks recently. And I feel like the players that you have picked bring upside and a really good floor. Like Van Sagi, I totally see playing NHL minutes. I don't know how many minutes, but I think that he is going to be a really good bottom 6 player. And I know I keep saying him, but he was one of my favorite players in the entire class. Obviously, I had him ranked like 28, 29. But getting him at 48 was an absolute steal. Same with Jack Murtagh. I really love this kid. So I think that there's so many players that are high up on the board, and they're slated at 13, 16, and like 19. So if you are a fan of the Flyers prospect pool, like, it's for a good reason, because you have a lot of players that are projectable.
Yeah, looking at Shane Van Sagi and trying to project him at the NHL level, I see a little bit of Garnet Hathaway, a guy who can project to score a little bit because his hands are like above a guy like Nick Delorier. He's not, he's better than that. And he brings a certain kind of physicality. And if he is on the squad and Hathaway is still here, there could be kind of like an influence there. And I think that would mostly be a positive thing. Chef? You got to unmute yourself there. Yeah.
If you go back and you look at what the Flyers were in the 80s and 90s, they weren't just drafting players that could score or talent, or they were drafting players kind of more like on the lines of Van Sagi, who maybe had better skill and could score goals, but they very physical players. One of which was the current coach of the team. Now he scored more, but that man did not shy away from any kind of physical contact, whether it be fights or anything. And if you go back and look at that, like Mellenby comes to mind too. He wasn't afraid to drop gloves. He wasn't afraid to be physical in games. And I'm not talking about fighting anymore. But I'm definitely talking about if you're a big body in this league now and you throw your weight around and you push it, it leads to better puck possession and it leads to more time in the offensive zone. And I think you wear down your teams faster, whereas this team wasn't playing physical in the last 3 years. I mean, would you agree with the assessment of this draft? And you look down that list that you guys have, and there's only about 4 or 5 of them that are under 6 foot, if that. So, and they're all on the thick side. So some of them a lot thicker than others too. But I just think there's a chance, and more so than anything else, this draft class that they took this year in particular, they all have that compete, and Dan was talking about Denver Barkey, and I think it started with him because this is the kid, like, he wants to win and he wins everywhere he goes. And it's kind of like you need that mentality, that mindset in there, and that winning is contagious. So is losing, and you don't want that. So I just think that there's a lot to be said for the overall. I mean, thinking about top end, bottom end, but they all seem to have that compete level in there. Do you agree with that? I'm sorry, Don.
Yeah, I actually love what you are saying, because I think that winning is a culture. You guys have been continue to say that you guys are building a culture, and I think that is one of the things that these rebuilding teams that don't succeed, they fail at. So winning is everything. I think that you are right that I think that Sam Dickinson probably would have been the player that they might have targeted, but they took Jett Luchanko after obviously the Sharks took Dickinson. But I feel like winning is huge in this part, and I also think that Michigan State is going to have multiple players that project to be very good NCAA players as well as NHL players. So they're going to have an opportunity to win this year. I know Penn State and some of these other programs like BU might also, but you also said one of your prospects is going to Boston. I can't remember who it was. Is Merteg going to Boston?
Yeah, I think Merteg is going to be there. Yeah.
And Carter Amico, I believe.
And Carter Amico, yeah.
That's right.
So
got a lot of guys playing together at their respective colleges too. So that's a big plus too.
Yeah, just the ability to continue to build that chemistry. Obviously, Amico and Mertag aren't the same position, but it's just that familiarity with each other. Obviously, Martone and Van Sagi are both going to be on, I think, different lines if I am correct there, but I think that it's just the familiarity with each other. I could see Van Sagi being on the power play with Porter Martone at some point, just trying to get into the front of the net, battling there, trying to get in front of the goalie, screening him. I think that the familiarity in practice, helping each other, I think it's going to be really good. You have that chemistry. That's why I like that every player on the Flyers, seemingly on elite prospects, plays for the Phantoms. It's really good to have that familiarity before you start going into the NHL. And then all these guys coming up together is a good thing. So, yeah, I completely agree with everything Chef said.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I did want to ask you, outside, I think, of Tuamala, the player that has the most pro experience is right there. I guess it would actually be Helge Grans, who with the injury to Rasmus Ristolainen may get a real shot this training camp. And he's one of those big defensemen. LA kind of gave up on him. And, he could get a shot, 6'4". He's not as aggressive using his size, but he has good hockey IQ. He's a good first pass kind of player. I wonder if you have any comments about him. And another AHL veteran getting to the point of being one is Nikita Grabenkin, acquired from the Toronto Maple Leafs, a 6'3" forward, real good dangler, physical player, not necessarily a scorer in terms of more of a setup guy.
Yeah, we'll start with Grabinkin. I know that he had 21 points, 39 games, 9 goals, 21 assists. Just taking flyers on players. I know, no pun intended, but that's literally the thing that I always say. But I think that it's really good to take these the Flyers on players that teams can't sign, because there's only a certain amount of contracts you have to sign. You have to make those decisions in every different league very, very quickly. Getting Grands, obviously big right-handed defenseman. I really like that. Early second round pick. So just taking that guy and seeing what you get. If he's already battling for a roster spot, maybe in training camp, that's a good sign. That means that it already worked out in whatever way it was. The reason why the Kings let him go, I don't know, but it's because like there probably wasn't a role. A guy that's was drafted in 2020, it's probably his go time to show if he can make it to the NHL or where is he going to go. But if he does make it to the NHL or crack the roster, play some games, even if it's not significant minutes, and he's still a bubble player, that's still good value when you haven't had to really give up a lot to get him. So I feel like those two guys just can fight for position. I think I'm not really sure what is going to happen with him, McDonald, or Gurbenkin, because they're obviously all going to be fighting for those roster spots. But at the end of the day, like I don't necessarily know if any of them are going to be in the core. But if one of them is, that just like means that you are getting so much value, basically, because these guys are kind of lower on the prospect pool list. So I just feel like it's always good to have these battles, and competition creates really good players. So, I'm not really sure if any of them are going to be core pieces out of a team, but depth is great too. And you never know what you get, because with prospecting, it's always interesting because these guys are 17, 18 years old when they're going to the draft. So there's always an inflection point that can happen, and they could look completely different a year after. Even like Dylan Strome, like a player, like it's just team fit too. Like he looked pretty okay with the Blackhawks, even though he was with like DeBrincat and Kane. Kind of should have looked a little better in the eyes of the organization and fans. I know that the Blackhawks fans liked him, but after he went to the Capitals, he got a good contract. He got really good minutes. He got a good role. It's just basically like the role, the belief in the team. So any of these guys can, if there's one guy that could make the roster, it probably could be the 2020 Grand 6'3" right-handed defenseman. But at the end of the day, I don't know who would make the roster.
Yeah, I just before we continue with the prospects, we just have a couple more. We know that when we last had you on, we had a special. I guess it was back in June. The Flyers had just acquired Trevor Zegras, and you were glowing in your comments about that. And we had a listener, Peter Tom Willis, who wanted to get, I guess, a restatement of what you thought of that acquisition, and where do you think the player is going from here on out?
Yeah, I was very surprised with the return that the Ducks got for Zegras, because I thought it was going to be a lot more. This is a really good guy with really good skill. Obviously, he had a viral moment where a reporter asked him to do the Michigan, and he's like, I'll try. And he scored the Michigan in the game after telling her he was going to do so. It's just, he has so much confidence. I think that this guy's going to be a legit, like, in my eyes, a superstar of the fans. Like, I see so much star potential. It's just he has to put it all together. And I'm not sure why some players just don't put it together. Maybe it's the system. Maybe it is like you just never really figure it out. But he has put up points in his career already at a very young age. So it's not like he hasn't done so. I think that injuries have also been something that has like stopped his growth. But you gave up like 1 of 5 second-round picks, and it was the third best one. So I feel like it was kind of a free trade, because you can't draft a second-round Trevor Zegras. You just can't. He has so much skill. I really feel like that was just a really good player. Him and Michkov, I think, are going to have instant chemistry if that's on the same line together, or if it's on the power play. I feel like they would probably play. I see him more as a winger, not a center. But even if they wanted to play him at center, I think that would be okay until a bridge comes in for Nesbitt. I think Luchanko is obviously closer, but Luchanko, Nesbitt, whatever it is, I think that they should try to sign Trevor Zegras to a 2-3 year deal on top of it as well, because it's probably not going to be as high AAV. And I think that if he can hit, it's change of scenery. And he has his best friend back too. So I feel like that's really good when you have Jamie Drysdale. So I feel like it's a win-win for everybody involved. And I think Trevor Zegras wanted to leave the Ducks. I think that it was just kind of time for everybody to move on and see what you have. So Trevor Zegras is a potential star for the Flyers, even though many people might disagree on me with that. He is, in my opinion, he has star potential. So I think that any team should have tried to give more than the Flyers. I'm just surprised the Flyers got him for so low.
Mhm. It's just you mentioned Jett Luchanko. He's an interesting case in that probably with the way Porter Martone has decided to go to college, that probably would have been a better option for him had the Flyers not signed him. Now he's kind of like in that gray zone where he can't go to the AHL because he's too young, but he probably would be better off playing there or in college than going back, especially to a sad sack team like Guelph, and hoping to get traded into a better situation. Well, he's going to be at training camp. I think he had a groin injury or something like that. They're being really cautious with him. But where do you see his career right now? And I think you mentioned that he does have 2C potential.
I think that players should be able to play anywhere that helps their development. I don't necessarily understand from an outsider's perspective on all this. I don't create rules or anything that a player should be blocked in any league. I think that it hurts development, and there should. I know that goes into it, but I think that there needs to be, when you develop players in a right way and you don't block, it helps the league grow because you have better players that are ready and they don't get spooked. I think that on the defensive side, when you have like a guy like Kevin Korchinski, that happened exactly to him, where he went to the NHL and was like a minus 44 in his first like 89 games, because it was like 5 and then 82 or whatever it was, or 7 or 8 and then 82. But in those first like season and a couple games, he did not look good at all. And it's very hard for defensemen to come back from that sometimes because he doesn't have the size, he doesn't have the strength. You're going to get beat up. Players are going to figure out what the weakness is and then attack that every single time because they're trying to get paid too. And they also realize that this guy is the weak link on a team that's also not very good. So when you have a bad team that is going to get beaten up anyway, and there's a weak point on that roster, and he's a defenseman, you're going to get destroyed. I think the thing with Jett Luchanko is that he is maybe not the best fit at 2C like right away. I don't think that he's like a 2C, but I think you should play him there just because like it's going to be hard for any player that has a defensive responsibility. So I think that it's easier for left wingers and right wingers to come into the league and just show their offensive prowess. But when you have a player that needs to be more of a two-way defensive or two-way center and have to have more responsibility in the defensive zone, it's going to be a little harder for him. But I think Jett Luchanko has the skill. Go.
Well, with Luchanko, there's like a 1% chance, guys, that we think he makes the team, because I mean he'll probably get an 8-game look again, maybe a little bit more, but then he'll go back down to golf. When the hopes that we will get, I'm hoping that he does get traded, but I mean, at this case, if he's going to stay at golf and he's going to be playing with subpar players, and I mean, is there a risk of a player getting like bored? It's like when you have that savant child in a regular class instead of AE or at a higher learning level. Is there a chance like they're going to pick up laziness and other things like that?
Yeah, the risk is also building bad habits. Like, you can put something in your head that says this works all the time at a lower level and then try to do that every single time, and it might not work in the NHL, so the translatability of your game could worsen because of that. So yeah, that's a really good point. I do see that as being the case for why I know money is involved, but I don't necessarily understand why you can't go to the AHL because I think it would help his development. I think a player it's different from every player and you have to evaluate. But if like Jett Luchanko needs to just dominate for his confidence and just continue to dominate and be the guy, have as much time on ice as possible, I think that would be great. If he needs to learn better, like be better in the defensive zone or whatever it is, like if you have like a trait that you need to work on, AHL would definitely be better. But since he can't do that, you might get pinpointed in scouting reports when a team comes in and is in a losing streak and we're like, how do we win? Well, you win by exploiting this guy's weaknesses because it's he's new to the league, he doesn't understand, he's not ready yet. So it is hard to balance what a player's right path is, but it's different for every player. And to your point, you can build bad habits by going in too early.
The crazy thing about Luchanko is he's still 18 years old. I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
The Flyers drafted him a year ago. He's still 18 years old. His birthday is August 21st. And I think we have to keep that in mind when talking about Luchanko. I think we probably would prefer he doesn't go back to Guelph, and it would be great if he ended up in NCAA or something like that. But it's not, it can't happen, right? So I think that I don't know. I think he's got more than a 1% chance of making the team out of camp and sticking. But I agree that it's probably not a huge chance. And it's a shame that he's kind of nursing this injury. We'll see what that turns into too. I mean, what did they said? It was like a groin injury or something like that, or a hamstring. Sometimes those are the kinds of things that turn into something that's a little bit more than that, right? So hopefully, because his biggest weapon is his speed. So they really need to make sure that they get that taken care of. But assuming it's just a minor thing, we'll see what happens in camp. I think that hopefully the likely scenario is he goes back to Guelph, but they trade him to another OHL team that can surround him with more talent. And then after the end of his OHL season, he, plays some games with the Phantoms or the Flyers, and we kind of take it from there. But I'm not sure he's NHL ready yet, and I don't know if throwing him in the NHL would be the best thing for his development either.
Yeah. Hence, my earlier discussion point about, it would have been great if the college option had been there for him, but that has passed. But so we'll see what happens. And I think that Luchanko is a very important player. A lot of people talk about, they passed on Z Boyum, but they passed on Konsta Helenius too, and that's a really nice player. So those two are also going to be compared, and I'm hoping that Jett can just make us forget all that. Of course, when you can skate like that, and he's really the only guy on the team that has that kind of outstanding speed, and as he gets stronger and more mature, he's going to get better. As long as they don't rush him back from the groin injury, of course. But I just wanted to wrap up tonight, Anthony, just talking about the World Junior Summer Showcase, and we were talking, prior to the show about how look, we know that Porter Martone is going to make Canada, and they sent their 8 best players home or back to the respective universities or junior teams or what have you for Canada as an example. But for players like Jack Berglund and our buddy Heike Ruonen, I mean, then it was nice for them to stand out. And on those teams, those guys are basically a shoo-in. Was there, like, Spencer Gill was attempting to make an impression for Canada. I'm not sure he's going to make the final cut. How much of it goes into what you saw, like the last week or so, versus the progression of them during the season in their regular respective clubs? Do you think?
Yeah, I think that, like, with any player going to the summer showcase, it's good for them to see where they're at, because you're going to be playing against all these different players that have played in all these different leagues. So I feel like it's like, where am I at? And I think that it can help people's confidence and hurt people's confidence. But the thing with, like, Gill, I've talked about this with Colton Davies from Daily Faceoff, and I know that he's high on Gill, and I think that he thinks that he can make the team because his time on ice, like what he was doing, he performed pretty well. And I feel like Canada is just a team that is so loaded that you really don't know who they're even going to bring. Oh, like Michael Misa should have been on the team last year. Porter Martone's going to be on the team because Hockey Canada loves this guy. Hockey Canada invited to play like him to play with like Sidney Crosby, Macklin Celebrini. He performed pretty well. He had a couple points. He had a goal. I mean, it was starting to get out there that the Sharks could take the guy because of his chemistry with Celebrini. But I feel like Porter Martone's definitely going to be a shoo-in for that team. He's going to have a big role. Hockey Canada loves him, like I said, a very good vision, and you're going to be able to see him with incredible players, and that's what he needs. He needs guys that are high hockey IQ and have that skill. So Hockey Canada is the perfect place for a guy like Porter Martone. And to go to the point of the Flyers, like Porter Martone, his skating looked really good playing internationally with Canada. So like everybody was talking about how that was a concern. It didn't even look like it was an issue. I feel like it just silenced the noise a little bit, but it didn't really even silence the noise. It should have silenced the noise a lot more. So I don't know if Gill will make the roster or have a lot of playing time, but I think he should because of what he showed. I think it's also good for like the next generation of people that are trying to make the roster to see that the summer showcase means a lot. And when you play good, like for one of your prospects, for Jack Berglund, I think that he's going to make the roster. I think that I'm pretty sure Anton Frundell and Victor Eklund and those guys are going to be back and everything, but I still think that he's going to make the roster. He's just that good of a player. I feel like it's going to be always really fun to watch what happens because the summer showcase it doesn't really mean the most, but it helps the guys that are fringe that are trying to make the roster more or try to figure out what their role is going to be. So even Murtag and guys like that, like I feel like there's so many question marks with Team USA. I think even Stephen Ellis said that Team USA left with more questions unanswered, and left with more questions than they came in with. I feel like Sweden and Canada always have loaded rosters, but I think that Berglund is probably going to make the roster, and I'm not really sure on Gill, but I feel like it would be a mistake if he wasn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I definitely think Berglund and our buddy Heike are in good shape there. So that was the last one I had. If anybody else, Dan or Chef, if you have any further questions for Anthony about prospects or and the like, if not, Anthony, you got to tell the folks you are a busy beaver. Now you're back from vacation.
Dan, you can go first.
Yeah,
Dan can go first.
Oh, I didn't have any final questions.
Oh, I have one thing. I'll ask because I think it's imperative to at least broach the subject because we just talked about Flyers top 20 pick prospects. Aside from Tumanala, thank you. Aside from him, pretty much have been the last 2 years, 3 years maybe. Now, we always talk about draft capital and that being prospects and picks before they actually turn into prospects. But realistically, looking down there, we talked about some of the other ones like maybe Gill or Hunter McDonald or even like some of these other players that we said were in that grouping of middle six guys or bottom six guys that look to be solid, and they might be NHL players, but they might not be for the Flyers, and that might not be a bad thing. I mean, they can always be used as trading chips down the line, right? When Dan was talking about when we go to free agency and we look at other teams to fill those pieces that we're looking at, whether it be free agency or trade. I think that do you agree that there's some players here that even though they're good players and there's nothing wrong with them, that they might be part of the future of the team by not being part of the future of the team? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, that's a great point. So when I look at prospects, I look at it in like a financial outlook or a stock market outlook. So all of these guys have value, and it's about assets. So you're trying to accumulate as many assets as possible. And to one of your points in the comments, somebody said that the Flyers need a 1C or more elite talent as well as top defenseman. But the thing is, like, one of your prospects that is ranked 13, 14, 15, or whatever it is could be ranked 7, 8, or 9 in some other prospect pool. So you have to look at what other teams have, and everybody in the league is looking at every other prospect. And there's always going to be diamonds in the rough. A prospect that is probably more suited or better off playing somewhere else and has better value for a team. So what I like to do is capitalize and take best player available after, like, obviously, like, top 15 picks, and then just try to get best player available, because I don't like drafting for need in the NHL draft, because these guys are 17, 18. You're basically drafting for the next regime, if in some cases, because the average coaching staff or coach is 2.3 years, and then the GMs have a little longer leash, but these guys take sometimes 4 years, 5 years. Goalies take 6, maybe 7. So, I mean, it could be a very long time that some of these guys pop. But what you need to do is accumulate as much value so that you can make those trades, and you can trade prospects where you have more replaceable players. So since you guys have so much depth in your prospect pool, that creates the ability for you guys to make a trade to get you over the top in some areas. That's why I always say never take best, or never take team need. Not never take, but I would always try to take best player available where somebody's falling a lot, maybe even 5 or 6 slots. I'm taking that player, because you never know what your need is going to be 3, 4 years down the road. And you never know if your hole that is filled already, that player leaves or injuries happen or anything. So I feel like what the Flyers, the Hawks, the Sharks, teams like the Ducks, the Blue Jackets have done is they've continued to take players that have realized value for their teams. Like the Sabres are a team where they had multiple number 1 picks. Same with the Rangers, number 1, number 2 picks, but it didn't really work out because they're not really, I feel that they're not maximizing the value of those young chips that they have. Like Dylan Cousins was traded for probably less than he should have. JJ Peterka wasn't traded at the top dollar. And it's about trading these guys or maximizing the potential of the full dollar. It's like Warren Buffett said, like buy a dollar for 60 cents or something. And that's similar to what you should be doing with prospects. That's why I like the Trevor Zegras trade. You're paying money, but it's not at a premium for an asset that could turn into a really, really strong value for your team. And if Trevor Zegras shows and realizes that potential, you can ship him off in the next deadline. So I really like that question, because I think that's how everybody should think. I might think differently, but I like that Chef agrees. And like, that's why I think that having guys like Guard and Vinsagi 13 and 16, at least in Dan's rankings, is good, because you can do whatever you want to try to get a player. You traded only a 2nd round pick and some change for a guy like Trevor Zegras, who can become that elite talent. The Flyers have had players that wanted to leave and top prospects leave and things like that, but it wasn't because of player development. I trust their player development. I think that they're taking the best players that they can at the right times and building a team at the same time. So I feel like they're drafting multipliers. I think that all of these players are assets. So you need to accumulate as many assets as possible and then figure out what you have when that time comes.
You got it. So, Anthony, where can people find you on YouTube, and what else you got going on?
So I have a ton of interviews coming out at the Prospect Down on YouTube. I cut them up on TikTok and YouTube Shorts and Instagram, growing on Instagram. I'm primarily on X, but I'm starting to just really go into the YouTube and TikTok content. I took a couple weeks off after the long run for the draft, but I'm finally back. I'm at Draft Pros for editorial manager, and I do interviews there too. I got really good interviews coming up with a couple top 10 picks. Like I know Dax and Rudolph, we already did one, so I'm gonna do a write up and have my interview come out with him. Adam Valentini. I have Ivar Stenberg. I have a Landa DuPont interview coming up too. So like just as many prospects as I can book. I'm, getting these guys to show a little bit more of their personality. I throw highlight videos over it too, just to show the viewer some things, interviewing some Blackhawks prospects too. And yeah, I'm excited for hockey to come back. I miss it a lot, but yeah, there's a lot to be done for this year and I'm excited for it.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for coming on. We look forward to having you on again very soon down the road.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. Thank you. Keep
you
up the
got
great
it.
work.
Yeah, man.
Thank you, guys.
Take care.
I appreciate it.
All right. Well, gents, that
What a
was
likable guy, huh? He's,
Yeah.
He
works
loves
hard
obviously
and,
loves what he does. Yeah.
really good guy.
Yeah. So, yeah, he knows a lot. Let's get a little word in here before we get and wrap up. Just to let people know about Jim South Street, 400 South Street in Philadelphia, PA. 40 years of the best cheesesteaks, hoagies, and fries, of course. In the grandest Philadelphia tradition, you know you want one. Your mouth is watering already. As you live down there, just don't go out in the street. Just pay the extra for Uber Eats or DoorDash and have that delicious food right to your door. From 400 South Street in Philadelphia, PA. Jim South Street. Check them out. Great cheesesteaks. You got to check them out. Okay.
I'm hungry now. Oh, man.
Yeah, me too.
Well, listen, we're wrapping up the show. It's perfect. So, Chef, let me get your last word. We'll go to Dan, and then I'll give the wrap here.
My last word is, hey, look, man, we talk about them like they're money and their assets and they're this and this, but they're also kids too. So when you're talking, just be a little respectful, remember that these kids are just kids. Who knows? We don't know if they're watching the show or listening or they read information about themselves. Just try to be at least, respectful with that. And hey, look, man, we're loving this video here. We're engaging with a lot more people than we did before. So it's great. If you have any questions, hey, hit us up. You can find me at Chef to Left B on Twitter. That's Chef to the Left B on Twitter or X. Thank you.
Yes, Dan.
Yeah, no, again, thanks for everyone who tuned in. It's fun doing this live. It is funny as I was going through my list today and you look at what Jack Berglund has done recently and to a lesser extent, Heike Ruohonen, it does show you, as I said, that the bigger guys sometimes take a little bit longer to develop. Mm-hmm. So I think that you look at all the big kids that the Flyers took this year, and you've got to think that some of those kids are really going to hit a next level. And it could be exciting if a guy like Nesbitt develops into a first line center, right? It's not out of the realm of possibilities. Mm-hmm. Seeing if, Shane Van Zage, that was the guy I really wanted them to draft on day 2. I still think he's got like Tom Wilson type of upside, right? It's some exciting kids. It'll be exciting to see how they come along. So that's going through the list. That's kind of what struck me. And I'm excited to see some of these kids in college too. It'll be Michigan State, Boston University. It'll be fun watching those teams play this season. Hopefully Carter Amico is healthy and playing his physical brand of hockey. So they've got some kids. It's going to be fun to follow along with this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jack Nesbitt, if you're worried about his skating or what he might be, like Dan is saying, I think of a guy like Dylan Strome, like Anthony was talking about. That guy just took a long time. I was hoping the Flyers would sign him. He just had to find the right spot. I think he was drafted in Arizona. Then he went to Chicago, and it was fortuitous for both Dylan and the Capitals. He just fell into a good situation. Hopefully we can get it done with Nesbitt here if we're patient, and that's going to take a lot of patience. After all, it's been most of the last 12 years or so. It's really been rough. So
yeah, we had the wrong Strome, right?
Right. Oh, yeah.
There are like 3 or 4 of them out there, and we had the wrong one.
Yeah. And from what I understand, Nesbitt is better than Matthew Strome already. That's not saying much. But hey, I thought I'd throw that in there. So anyway, you can follow the O&B Puckcast on several podcast platforms: Apple, Spotify, iHeart, TuneIn, and Amazon Audible. You can check us out on X and on Blue Sky at O&B Puck, at O&B Puck. We don't do a lot on Blue Sky. We post the show. I just want to be honest. If we get questions, we'll answer. But mainly our home is X in terms of interaction. But we're also occasionally we pop up on GETTR at O&B Puckcast, at O&B Puckcast. And of course, YouTube and Facebook. We have our live stream. And we're going to get the show out there on X. Probably from now on, we're going to be putting the YouTube link because I think people like that. But obviously, we're going to be on the audio formats. The main thing is with YouTube, you got to hit that like button, okay? Hit the notification bell so we have a stream. You're there, and please subscribe. It really helps us out. It helps move us up the charts, whether it's YouTube or any of the audio platforms like Apple and Spotify, like I mentioned earlier. And it tickles the algorithm and moves us up the charts when people are looking for Philadelphia Flyer podcasts. So I think I covered it all of it. So anyway, that's all we have for you tonight. I know at the end of the month, we're going to be back with our buddy Lyle Richardson from Specters Hockey with our Around the League show. We're going to go around the league, the whole league, and we're going to talk about each team who went, who stayed, who went, who's coming in, and what kind of outlook they have. Just a thumbnail of each of the 32 teams. It's fun. And Lyle, and we have a good time. And he has a couple of scotches when it's all over. Anyway, that's all we have for you tonight.
Me too.
So until next time, yeah, right. Everybody, thanks for listening and take care.